Nashville like M3. And we're super happy to be here today. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, show of hands. All right, who's used IoT this morning? Yeah. How did you use IoT this morning?
Alexa to check the weather.
Exactly. All right. Same thing.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
The weather.
Got a little rough last night, didn't it? Yeah. Got a little scary. So, all right. So, kind of what we're going to be talking about today, just in relation to that, is AV systems in our daily work lives. What does IoT mean in that context? Prescriptive analytics. What are prescriptive analytics and what do they do? How does IoT feed into it? Where are we today? Where are we heading in the future? And how can we get these tools to help us make better decisions when we're thinking about our audiovisual environments? All right. So first, AV systems in our daily lives. So you guys might kind of recognize this this conference room as kind of a normal conference room that we might use to interact with our coworkers and remote folks every day. So these days, post-COVID, every meeting has some form of remote participation, right? So everything's got to be remote enabled so that video conferencing is easy to use. Knowing what types of technologies to invest in are critical. It's got to be that seamless, easy to use experience for everybody that's involved, right? It's got to be consistent. It's got to be repeatable, scalable. And so no matter how complex the rooms are, you still need that familiar, consistent GUI so that, it could be the most complex room in the building, but it still needs to be easy to use, right? And going on behind the scenes, you see all these different devices, all these different things that are connected, communicating to each other. You may only see a few things out in the room, like a projector and a monitor and some microphones. All the stuff is going on behind the scenes, making those devices talk to each other, and each one of those devices has that IoT capability in them. And so what do we do with that data? How do we ingest it? How do we take it in and learn what it's telling us? So even back to the conference room, we've got a few things hanging out here that we're going to see, like our touch panel there that our users are interacting with. They're driving their meetings from those devices. You got your display. Even your displays can spit out data, and you can adjust that and learn from it. You got your camera that can do some really cool stuff that a few years ago wasn't possible, like people counting, like how many people are in my meeting, what's even the temperature in the room. These cameras can do all kinds of crazy stuff these days. And then you've got microphones that you may not even see, like up in the ceiling, that are all living on the network, transmitting digital audio. And then even speakers, even loudspeakers these days can be living on your network, delivering information that can be captured.
Cool. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about what is IoT and a little bit about how that relates to AV, but we'll start just generally.
I'm going to go to this.
So a lot of you folks are familiar. IoT is really any type of hardware device out in the cloud that's connected, whether it's wireless, another form of communication, 5G, that has the ability to send data back and forth. Many times also they have the ability to take actions based on that data, but it's pretty pervasive in the landscape. People see it every day in their homes, in their businesses. Here's a few examples that I think a lot of us see every day. And I know like this morning, I've got a thermostat, we've got the water in the yard, we've got our lights, and there's some really amazing applications that are in the field today that some folks may not even notice. Like in the upper left there, we recently worked on a project with highways in Dallas where they have IoT devices underneath the highways that are detecting traffic of cars to help regulate traffic patterns. Then actually ties right into their pricing model so they can see, like during rush hour, how many cars are on the road, do we need to adjust our prices to help better accommodate throughput through the highway. So there's IoT absolutely everywhere. They're good examples. Oh, the other one, the robots in the restaurants. I was in Atlanta a few weeks ago and went to a restaurant that had robot servers, and it was awesome. Like they took our orders, we waited, they brought our food, little board said thank you. I mean, it was absolutely amazing.
And you don't have to tip.
Right. We patted on the head. But the core is that it's able to send data back and forth and many times able to act on that data. Now, one of the things that people bring up a lot is privacy. So it's worth noting, we thought about doing something creepy with like some kind of device and tracking people's phones. We opted against that. This is actually a real data source that we use on many projects. We purchase their data. So anyone that ever uses Waze, Google Maps, any type of GPS, all of your data is being collected at all times. All these companies gather it, aggregate it, and then they track where you came from, where you're going, and kind of tie together a map or a timeline of your day. And so right now, this is information from the Dunkin' Donuts down in Franklin that I have visited. And what you can see on the left are places people came from to go to that Dunkin' Donuts. So apparently 1.5% of all the people from the movie theater went to the Dunkin' Donuts after, came from the movie theater to go to Dunkin' Donuts, and then after Dunkin' Donuts, 3.5% of them went to Costco. And so that's each and every one of you. They can't actually identify us. They don't sell that. You can correlate it with credit card data. So privacy is a tremendous, tremendous concern. But for everyone else, kind of the upside is, this data is publicly available. You can purchase it. So if you've got solutions, like M3's got this amazing repository of their own data, but then you can combine that with third-party IoT data sources to even enrich it further. So a lot of cool / creepy things going on. All right, we'll move on a little bit. So how fast is IoT growing? And this is insane. So we pulled this off this IoT analytics site. The far right of that graph, you can see IoT devices are growing at around 16% year over year, which is insane. And what I thought would be even more interesting was to say, how fast is population growing? Just generally, only at around 1%. So the number of devices out in the field compared to the number of people on the earth is increasing dramatically. So every year, more and more devices are out there, which means more data to collect, more opportunity to make good decisions, potentially take actions. On the right, a lot of numbers, but the call out there is how those IoT devices are connected. And you can see like wired IoT, right? That does exist. 5% growth year over year, 10% growth year over year. 5G, 100 to 200% growth in 5G devices collecting data right now. Like that is insane. That's like an incredible, and that's why you hear about it all the time. So tremendous growth, way more than people. I mean, the devices outnumber us already. If we took a poll of the room, like if you have a phone, have a watch, a Fitbit, I don't know what's going on with the microphones, there's devices everywhere. It's awesome. And then if you try to look at the industries that today are using IoT, it's kind of telling you two stories. So on the right-hand side of the graph, you've got where it's pervasive today, which is industrial, high-tech, automotive. Those are industries that have historically were early adopters, and they see the value of deploying that type of technology early on. But on the left, where the numbers are lower, that's where the opportunity is and where things are going. You see things like healthcare, pharma, food, communication, retail. While today they may not represent as big a chunk of the industries, those are tremendous areas of growth. And there are some amazing, amazing stories in the medical field too, where you hear about, being able to swallow a pill that has nanorobots that can detect certain things or take images and send back readings on your health. So many absolutely amazing things going on right now. Cool. All right, I'm gonna take a quick drink.
Okay. All right. So what is prescriptive analytics and how does it feed into IoT?
Awesome, all right, a little bit more for me.
That was
a little bit more for me. So we're clearly nerds, and we're gonna talk about the evolution of analytics at organizations. On the left-hand side, there are really kind of 4 different categories of analytics, or 4 different levels of maturity of analytics. You've got descriptive, which is what's going on, diagnostic, which is the why, predictive, and prescriptive. And we're gonna skip the nerd and really put it in a context that's a little bit easier to digest. You hear a lot of kind of this medical equivalency for analytics maturity. So if you think about going to a doctor's office, the first thing they do, you'll describe the symptoms, what's going on. And you'll find that in like reporting. The business analogy is putting out reports in Excel or Power BI or Tableau. So you describe what's going on, and most organizations have that and have plenty of it. Analysts building reports off of data. The next step is the why. Can we actually diagnose an illness, diagnose what's going on at your business? What's causing an issue? From there, you would predict where it's going. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? What's gonna happen in 6 months? What's the prognosis of that particular situation? And then lastly, you've got the prescriptive analytics, which that's the context of here's something that's gonna solve your problem. Here's the medicine you can take. Here's what you can do, the action that's gonna solve your problem. And so you kind of think about this in this medical terms and then put it within your business context, and all of those still line up, where the organizations that can actually go from describing what's going on all the way to automating a solution to an identified problem are the ones that are going to be most successful and really be able to leverage the most out of their data. Here's a little bit more of a formal description of that, where you've got the different rows representing descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, and across the top, there's another kind of dimension that's important. It's the human element. So if you're an org that really focuses on reporting and description, you're probably going to have a big team that's producing those reports, a lot of humans working on that. And the further you go down, the less those humans have to focus on creating the reports, and the more you're automating both creation and potentially the actual implementation of solutions. And those folks can then focus more on your core business. So it's kind of reallocating resources from like just pulling analytics and making reports in Excel to automating it to eventually connecting that to the actual solution. A good example of that is like there are cars right now that will automatically schedule service appointments. A weird feature on our coffee maker is it automatically orders new pods when we need it, or like you'll see a fridge that'll detect, are you out of milk, and order more. So in the business context, we're going to talk about AV, how you can look at your data, come up with some type of plan or prescription, and then be able to solve that for a better experience for your AV users. Cool. Now, we're not going to get into specific technologies. This is just kind of a cornucopia of different logos, of different tools you could use as part of the analytics process, from data ingestion to ETL, to the actual model building and the presentation. There's so many tools out there. Honestly, the right tool is the one that fits with your business. It fits with either your current skill set, where you want to be in 2 or 3 years. In the case of working with M3, we focused really a lot around the Microsoft stack that kind of aligned with their internal business users. Some custom work in Python, and then some presentation in Power BI, and also through a custom portal to display some of the analytics and some of the predictive outcomes. But really, it's whatever works best for your org. You just try to find the best fit. Work with a partner who can guide you down that path. And then this is the particle collider, and this is the only slide where we used a lot of old school PowerPoint. So really, the intersection of IoT and analytics, right? IoT is going to provide you with immense amounts of data. And we have some count later just from the AV front. It is tremendous. And the potential to do actions where the analytics side is going to provide you with that prediction, that prescription, like how can I fix something? And at the end of this, when those two things coming together, you end up with optimized business decisions, making better, smarter, faster decisions around your organization. Cool. All right, Will's going to talk a little bit about where we are today.
Yeah, where are we today? Where are we heading in the future? So just kind of level set of what some of us might be triggered by at the moment. So these old school hardware codecs cost upwards of $10K. Some of you might have been administrators for Skype in your past lives. You've got ISDN switch stacks that are handling the low-res video conferencing that you're doing in your organization, and you've got low-res video connections. So all that's kind of where we came from. COVID obviously accelerated everything with what we're doing now. Every different hardware manufacturer, every different conferencing platform is going to be offering these monitoring tools, these metric tools. Everything's going to be going up to the cloud. Software as a service is an option for pretty much all these folks. So you may recognize some of these logos like WebEx, QSys, Extron. So all the major manufacturers have some form of monitoring and metrics tool. So we're going to look again. Here's just a standard conference room design. So we've got our basic equipment, like here's our matrix switcher that's taking in all of our video sources. It's taking it from there, transporting it to the other end to a display. You're getting your audio processing, your audio sources are coming in and eventually making it to the loudspeakers or to the participants on the far end. And then maybe it's connected to a switch that's also tied into the greater network fabric of your facility, or it's a standalone, isolated environment. And so that's kind of what we've seen in the past, like isolated rooms that are, maybe it's a handful of rooms, maybe it's an entire deployment across a campus, but these are either isolated on their own internal networks, or everything's kind of maintained within that one environment. This one, maybe it's a server that's deployed on-prem, that's maintained, there's associated costs and headaches with that. So basically siloed. Everything is in its own silo previously. Whereas now, the experience that we're having in our conference rooms needs to be mimicked with the users at home, with their work-at-home setups, even mimicked on their own devices. And so all these devices, handheld devices, computers, laptops, complex conference room systems, they all need to communicate with each other. They all need to pull down the same amount of data, and they're all capable of providing these rich sources of data that Ricardo was talking about. And so every major manufacturer exposes APIs on their device level things. So even the tiny little transmitter that's just responsible for, taking a Cat5 cable, the signal coming over that, and converting into HDMI. Even that device has APIs that are available that we can talk to, that we can pull data from. And we can go all the way up to the brain of the system. It's connected to the overall network. We can pull all types of awesome telemetry data from that. So this is an example this is a real snapshot of some of the IoT devices that we've deployed, and just the amount of data that's coming in on those. 200 files, every minute for this one specific deployment. So we're getting all this data. Like we've enabled some devices through our own proprietary processes and code. So what do we do with all this now? We've got all this data coming in. We see it all coming. Now what do we do with it?
Yeah, so we added this because we're always astounded by, from the AV solution, how much data and monitoring metrics we're actually collecting. So in the course of a year, these deployed AV devices that Will's talking about have monitored 103 million minutes of usage, and we've collected 1.6 trillion different data points. Now, this means every room, every minute, every device is sending health data, usage data, on, off, reboots, every single data point. And it's tremendous the amount of information that can flow through the system. And obviously, working with a partner that understands how do we use it, how do we filter through it and make sense of all that data is key to this. But just the numbers become astounding very, very quickly. And the other thing, just to throw out there for context, I think everyone knows, you look at the usage of kind of this hybrid AV solutions with Zoom and with Teams. I think COVID was a tremendous boost to that. But both Zoom and Teams, I think, are looking at nearly 300 million active users a month. And so Will kind of mentioned the hardware in the rooms, and that information gets combined with data from these hybrid solutions. So you're pulling data from hardware, you're pulling data from SaaS solutions to kind of create this big pot of information that you can pull from and better understand how folks are leveraging your technology solutions.
All right, so how are we going to use these tools to make better decisions? So whenever we were developing our own platform that we call M3 Vision, we thought, who are the specific people that need this information, need this data, and what do they need to see, how do they need to action on it? So we took it from 3 perspectives. So the technician that's responsible for maintaining the systems and supporting the end users on a day-to-day level, the manager, director of IT, the person that's coaching those teams, that's responsible for just the human resources as well as budgeting for the lifecycle replacements of things. And then what is the CIO, what is the CTO, whoever's signing the check for the technology spend at the end of the day, we can present this, say, we need $10 million to do this. Well, what does that person that's signing that check ultimately, what do they need to see to be comfortable with signing off on that technology spend? So we're looking at things like live monitoring for the technicians, dynamic resource planning, focusing your resources for the people that are managing those teams of technicians, and then some budget planning, life cycle planning tools that somebody would need to sign off on a technology spend. And so we're going to get all these different platforms. So depending on your environment, you guys have probably got some mixture of this stuff. So Crestron, QSC, how is that combining with a ticketing system like ServiceNow? How is that working with the Microsoft data that's coming in for emails, chats, Teams calls, all that stuff? How is that filtering in to IoT and analytics? And yes, even our own M3 IoT devices, how are they fitting into that as well? So we can start to look at very specific things, like let's look at some calendaring data. And we're going to start looking at future high occupancy days. So maybe your technicians, maybe they need to be aware, you've got a lot of rooms, but you've only got a handful of technicians. Where do they need to focus their time? So we can look out in the calendaring data and predict, hey, on this particular day in this certain set of rooms, there's going to be a lot of meetings in this area. So maybe our technicians need to be focused there to do things like kick meetings off, support end users, do maintenance sweeps before the day even begins. So we can predict that stuff with this. We can do live monitoring. It's a huge thing that we're doing, so that we know that there's a problem before the end users do, before meetings are affected, before your business slows down. So we can trigger offline alerts even down to the device level, just like we were talking about. All those little devices that are all IoT capable, we can monitor those from that specific level. So maybe the whole room isn't down, but hey, your laptop is not going to work because the transmitter that it's connected to, that thing's is reporting offline. And then obviously you can get down to the control system level where if this whole room is dead, we need to action on that immediately. So that's just the type of stuff that we do thanks to the work we've done with Level 60 in our Network Operations Center in our national headquarters. This is a real screenshot. So yeah. Then we can start looking at, how do we make our teams work smarter? How do we make our systems tell us where to go? So pre-checks is another word that we use for like preventative maintenance, room sweeps. It's all kind of synonymous. So we can say, hey, based on these certain set of factors, here's what our system is recommending. So this little robot icon there is saying, based on the calendaring data that we have, we know there's going to be high levels of occupancy in this room. Based on our monitoring and metrics, we know that there's been some hardware failures in this room within the past 24 hours. We know that there's service tickets that are open in these particular environments. So we're gonna assign a rubric score to that room and say, hey, our technicians that are responsible for these rooms, here's where you need to focus your day-to-day activities. So it's taking all these different sources, all these different data points, and combining them to say, hey, here's how we need to focus our resources. And then once we have all this data coming in and that aggregates over time, we need to start looking at life cycle replacements. That's every person that's in charge of a technology spend has to have some type of life cycle in place. So as the individual components age, as they fail over time, as we aggregate that data of hardware outages, and then just general age of equipment, maybe you're on a 5-year life cycle. Well, we can assign that value to maybe your control systems that we need to take into account and say, hey, you've hit your 5-year point. Here's where we need to start focusing our budgetary dollars to make sure that this stuff stays, new, fresh, and the end users, they don't care that it's a new control processor, right? They could care less. They just want to know that their business meetings are going to go off without a hitch. So we can get ahead of failures by keeping our equipment fresh. And then once we start compiling all that data over time, we can look at how often these particular conference rooms or training rooms, your room standard types, how often are they being used? How are the end users utilizing them on a day-to-day, month-to-month level? And we can say, hey, you've been using this, your small conference room standard, you've been using those rooms a ton. Maybe the giant training rooms stay empty most of the time, so we don't need to really invest in that area, or vice versa. So as all that data, the usage data from all these different devices, the calendaring data, everything kind of compiles into form this picture of like, here's how we need to spend our money on this certain set of standards. Cool. And so kind of how it ties all together, right? So we want to tie all this stuff together. We've got our insights from our predictive analytics. Our IoT has given us all the data. And so what does that mean when they all merge, right? So enhancing the user experience. The individual, depending on your business, if technology isn't your core competency of your business, your end users don't care that much what's going on behind the scenes, right? But they care that the systems work when you need them to. And so all this data, all these data points provide you actionable steps to make sure that end user experience is a positive one. And so that means they're using your equipment that you've invested in. That means they're able to accomplish their business goals, and technology is not an impediment. It's an aid to that. And so you can optimize that life cycle planning, improve your resource allocation, improve the operational efficiency. Everybody gets a lot more efficient at their jobs once they know where to go. When the systems are giving you, they're laying it out for you, here's what you need to spend your day doing based on these certain set of factors, then everybody gets a lot more efficient, systems stay up, people stay happier with their overall experience with their technology.
Great. We'd be remiss if we didn't touch on a few of the kind of the headwinds and tailwinds. We kind of did touch on them throughout the earlier conversation. From a headwind perspective, the issues that people face are pretty common, and security is really kind of one of the number one issues. A lot of the conversations, even with M3 and the partners they work with, start around security. You know, what data is leaving the system? How are we securing that information, ensuring that it's encrypted, ensuring that we're not violating any regulations that need to be conformed to. So having the right plan and partner to work with on security issues is critical, because a lot of potential for data leakage out there. And then, of course, you know, having the right people, like talent they always talk about. That goes back to, again, finding a good partner, making sure that you've got a team that understands how to use data, how to use IoT, and kind of bring it together. But on the tailwind perspective, and we'll kind of look at this in a second as well, you've got technology solutions that change literally daily. You know, new ML, AI, automated learning solutions, cheaper online data warehousing, reporting tools. I mean, all of these things, even the hardware and devices. Fortune 500 companies using the same systems that smaller local businesses are using. So that provides a tremendous opportunity. And you can learn from those bigger companies too of how to implement and deploy these solutions. So that's been exciting to see, where it used to be back in the day, you know, it was, maybe they had like Teradata or something, and like no one could afford, you know, other than a handful of companies could afford it. But today you've got folks using, whether it's Google, Amazon, Databricks, Snowflake, of all sizes, leveraging these amazing platforms to build awesome solutions. So.
All right, so once we start compiling all this data, we can start doing some really cool things. Once we start looking at future trends and opportunities that are out there. Behavioral analytics is something that's really fascinating. So you're already probably getting some of this from Microsoft. You're getting these reports that hit your inbox that say, you know, here's how much time you spend emailing, chatting, in calls, all that stuff. There's companies that are taking it even further, right? They're judging, you know, once you're in a video call from your home office, is your microphone turned on? Is your camera on? How are you engaging from home? How's your network quality? All that information is available from your hardware devices that you have that are tied to these cloud systems. And so once that all starts compiling, you can be assigned a score, and your manager that's managing your team remotely can say, all right, we can tell how you're doing from home. We can tell how you're engaging with your team. We can promote our culture this way. Because that's really hard, right? That's something that we all deal with. Maybe you guys work from home sometimes too, or all the time. How do you stay engaged with the culture? How do you judge folks that work with you or under you, and to know that they're actually working the way they're supposed to? And it's really provides some insight into how people are actually performing.
Yeah, I'll just throw on top of that. When we first started working with M3, I remember one of the things that surprised me the most was that we started looking at these APIs that are available for Zoom and Teams, and I was astounded by the size of the JSON packets of data that were getting sent back from my own computer. I was like, oh my God, why does it need my printer's name? And it's got like my camera model. They are like, with Zoom and Teams and everything, they're sending thousands and thousands of rows of information on your own systems. So privacy on one hand, but an amazing, amazing source of data if you're looking to better understand usage and quality for your team.
Yeah. All right. And one of the other things that we're starting to see now is the hardware that we use, the hardware that we install as AV integrators is starting to align to the software packages that are out there. So you're going to see ultra-wide displays. So that's wider than your standard 16 by 9, 16 by 10 displays. So we're talking 21 by 9 displays that are manual experience. Everybody's laid out. There's a lot more view participants. So that's something that we've seen very recently start happening. Asset tracking. So every tiny little device can be tracked through beacons. Like for instance, that pallet of waters that you guys didn't see fall off the truck a few minutes ago. All those individual water bottles could have been tagged, and we would have known how many were damaged on that accident that just happened. So yeah, so we saw that out of our peripheral, but you guys didn't. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. Nobody was hurt though, so we're all good there. So asset tracking is something it's really a lot cheaper than it used to be these days. And then augmented reality, right? We all kind of see the Facebook metaverse stuff, and we might chuckle at, you're in a cartoon world meeting with your coworkers, and it feels a little weird at this point. But that stuff is starting to get more and more advanced, more and more sophisticated. You're seeing medical training that's using augmented reality. You're seeing design, architecture firms use these tools to be more immersive, to be more real life with the things that they're designing, the things that they're working on. And all those platforms, all those devices are just further enriching just the overall technology experience. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. In terms of emerging tech, we talked about and kind of mentioned a few of the bigger players. Again, we're very agnostic in our approach, and with M3 did a lot of work in Microsoft's platform, but really across analytics, data, IoT, all of the major players are coming out with incredible tools that are incredibly affordable too. I mean, literally pennies for certain things. And I would, if you haven't played with kind of the exposed APIs on Microsoft or Google or Amazon, I mean, I would recommend it. You can just Google for them and like throw in a photo and it'll recognize everything in the photo. Throw in, paste in some piece of text and it'll give it a score of like how happy it is and, categorize it. There's so much incredible tools that are out there that, you don't necessarily always have to write the code. So there's a lot of self-service products. From the ML standpoint, data robots are great when people like, it's like drag and drop ML. So there's so many incredible things that every day are being developed that it's just an exciting space to be in. And then, I mean, this is just a sampling of tools that are out there. Again, so many options to choose from. In this particular space for AV, we had the luxury of being able to use Microsoft Stack, which is awesome. We, again, a lot of custom Python code, and then fantastic integrations with ServiceNow, with Zoom, with Teams, that kind of helped us create a solution pretty quickly. But there's so many things out there that you can kind of explore, from reporting to analytics to data platforms, that I would highly recommend, take a bunch of them for a test drive and, see what works best for your org.
All right, so what are some practical tips for implementing the prescriptive analytics into your environment? So first thing you need is a tech partner that's capable of helping you with that, of unifying all these platforms. Somebody that's focused on, on the actual reality of all these devices that are providing data and how can you leverage that? Because everybody's got their siloed systems, right? The WebEx system is not going to tell you how your QSC and Crestron devices are performing. So all these different manufacturers have the exposed data. You need a tech partner that can unify all these into that single pane of glass that you're looking for. So design your networks with AV in mind. So I know Chris and Nathan here that work with me for a number of years. We know from many firsthand experiences that when AV is not considered with network deployments, it can be quite painful. A lot of times that we in the AV industry we're an afterthought, and then all of a sudden, whoa, we gotta scramble to get AV systems stood up on our network. So design your network topography with the AV systems in mind so that they can communicate with each other and with your cloud management platforms. And then standardize on rooms. That's something that we preach a lot. Have a scalable solution that is repeatable. You know what your experience is going to be moving from space to space, whether that's across the country or within a campus or an individual building. Room standardization. That doesn't mean every room has the exact same technology in it, but it means it's repeatable and scalable to a point so that the experience is the same.
Also, I'll throw on just a little bit there. One of the tips, we said like find a good partner. Within your own organizations too, you want to make sure you create a partnership between the tech folks and the business folks. Because I'll say, we definitely have a lot of awesome like tech nerds on our team, but we don't know the AV space. We don't know like what's good latency, how many milliseconds do I want, and you can collect the data, but without having someone who can really understand it, it's a challenge. And that's why it's been awesome working with the guys at M3. Like they know how to digest that information and help pick out what's going to be important and what's not. Because without that, you just have a bunch of data and some lines on it. So giving it that context has been awesome and kind of made it fun for us.
Yep. And the thing you can't forget in all this is the end user experience. So you can't get excited about all these new different things you want to do and forget that the people that you're actually trying to benefit with these solutions, they're the ones that are going to be using it to perform their business. So just like Microsoft is doing this, when you hang up a meeting, how was your meeting? Rate it for us. Or you go to the bathroom at the airport and there's the smiley face stuff that you probably don't want to touch. But yeah, so how was your experience? What was it like using this system, this solution? Don't lose sight of that end user experience, because ultimately we're relying on people to communicate with each other. That's all that we do in the AV integrations. Like, how do we help people communicate with each other? Yeah. All right. So what's your path? How do you get there? So the first thing you got to do within your organization is really define the value of it. What is this going to mean for our operational efficiency? what is this going to mean for our end user experience? How is this going to benefit them down the road? And how quickly do we need to get this stood up? What part of our life cycle are we in right now? Then you can move to optimize your business model. So, communicate internally. How is this going to affect us as we interact with each other on a day-to-day basis? How is this going to benefit our clients? What benefit will this provide to them? And then align with your tech partner. Find somebody with that expertise that can take all these systems, merge them into one, single pane of glass so that you can see and understand the story that your data is telling you. And also, you got to keep, as Ricardo was saying, keep the security, keep the data security front of mind, because we definitely don't want to, introduce, risks to our environment, because, yeah, that can bring the whole thing to a grinding halt. So, and then deploy and adopt. So launch out with your plan, over-communicate what you're doing with all the affected stakeholders. So how long will this typically take? It obviously depends on how many rooms you have, right, and how big your environment is. But generally, we see 1 to 2 weeks to define the value internally for you and your stakeholders. 2 to 4 weeks to kind of walk through that second step where you're evaluating, is this the right solution for us internally? Is this going to benefit our clients externally? About a month to get aligned with tech partners, with your tech partner that's going to deploy the solution. You got to align all the different teams, because in reality, if your organization is a medium to large size, there's going to be different teams over these different aspects that are going to be providing data. So you're going to have a unified communications team that's over your Teams deployment, your Zoom, your WebEx. There's going to be a totally different team that's over your IT help desk, that maybe that's over your service ticketing platform. And so getting those teams aligned with each other and say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's the direction we're going. Let's work together to get this stuff up and running. So there's usually different siloed stakeholders within an organization that need to start talking to each other. And then deployment and launch and communicating, once you get past all this initial stage, usually about a month to 3 months, again, depending on how large your deployment is. So end of the day, not that long. Yeah. All right, that brings us to the end of our presentation. So does anybody have any questions? How are you guys pulling this certain thing off? Based on, tell us about your environments that you see. How will this apply to my environment where I work? Anybody have any questions? Yes.
I was really interested in all the places you can go to, pull into your own room or whatever. So I've created a platform for event planners to utilize virtual site tours to make qualified decisions before sending requests for proposals.
Right. Very cool.
Boring thing that everyone thinks that parties just happen or
Yeah.
meetings just happen, but
That sounds
it's a
awesome.
huge thing.
Yeah.
My problem is I've been working on it now for 3 years, and I've built the front end, have a little bit of back end, and I've brought in things like a job forum, and I brought in things like connecting, all those things. How can you find that right partner to I need to go to the next step and create the automation? And understanding, is this being built from scratch, or being able to use something like a form that's already there, and finding a partner that understands what I'm trying to do and utilize the tools that are out there instead of creating it all from scratch.
Yeah.
Are there communities I don't really know? I'm an event planner. I
Right.
know. I know what I want to do.
Right.
How do I find that person? Is that like a job title? Is that
I mean, honestly, I might start by talking to maybe other people in your space in event planning that, maybe bigger firms, maybe other firms in different cities, I don't know what your space is, and see if they've done something similar, or an industry that's similar, like whether it's maybe the hotel space, do a lot of work in lodging, or.
Closer to, let's just say maybe Amazon, Airbnb, stuff like that is utilized, but there's nobody else doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the hard thing, is understanding.
Yeah, maybe, finding partners that kind of have a foot in all those worlds.
Yeah.
Like Level 60 Consulting, they do a lot of hospitality, a lot of hotel data stuff. So,
This would be like Expedia or someone travel out, say, for the events world.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you after too. We actually built Expedia's pricing system. So we worked with them for like 8 years building their back end. So if I don't know, I can definitely direct you to someone who might know in that space for sure.
Because there's a lot out there that I can really connect instead of building it from scratch.
Right.
Yeah. And there are a lot of amazing tools for that connection, like these kind of drag and drop connectivity tools that you can kind of build your own workflows yourself too. So yeah, I'm happy to share some of that, and maybe there's someone I can connect you with. Yeah.
I just think it looks like a job
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
sure, I
that's the
can-
challenge that we're all facing, like in our worlds, right? Like we've got all these systems that are out there. How do we get them to talk to each other and to provide us with those actual prescriptive analytics that say, here's what you need to do next, right? So that's the whole point of what we're trying to do in the AV space as well, saying we've got all these devices, even those the wireless access points. All those things can provide a crazy amount of data, and how do we interpret that? How do we learn and go forward with it?
I have another question, sorry, about
Yeah.
the AV portion
Go
of
for
it, because doing events and meetings, that is the biggest expense we're coming across because they've all consolidated at these hotels with Encore. Encore is like 12 to 20
Right.
times more expensive than everyone else. Our biggest problem is the Wi-Fi. It's those access points. Why are the access points so expensive? Like you can literally get on it in your room and do whatever. When you get into a meeting space, they're trying to sell you Wi-Fi. Is there a reason why access points, or is it just a money grab?
We do too much work in the space to comment on
Yeah.
camera. It is a great opportunity to generate revenue.
Yeah, you kind of have people hostage at that point, right? They need your Wi-Fi. Yeah, they're going to do it. So yeah, but in that space, we operate in that space a lot too with our live events department, and so we understand those challenges as well, and we're happy to talk to you about that as well afterwards, because we also do live events planning and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And there are some awesome 5G solutions that you may want to explore. I don't know where you are and stuff, but like, Verizon has a 5G plan that, depending on where you are, may be able to mimic, the bandwidth you get with on-prem Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it all goes back to the 5G cellular networks that we're seeing the IoT devices use more and more. So it's getting better and better and cheaper and cheaper. So maybe, having your own easily deployed 5G little network routing system would be better than relying on paying to use a WAP that's right above your head. So yeah. Yeah, it is. So yeah, those are great points. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate the opportunity. If you want to talk about any of this stuff further, scan that QR code. That'll pop you over to my Calendly, and if you want to talk to me or Ricardo, we can work that out from there, or both of us. So yeah, but we're happy to meet with you guys. We've got some awesome swag in the back, like tiny footballs and pins, right? And even USB drives. So yeah, but yeah, come talk to us, ask us any questions that you may have, and yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.